headline number 3, our favorite headline of the week, I think. Wegmans is pulling the plug on scan and go mobile shopping in its stores. According to Grocery Dive, Wegmans is ending the use of scan and go shopping in its app as of September 18th. Users of the app will receive a $20 digital coupon to compensate for the service being shut off. A Wegmans spokesperson also had this to say, quote, unfortunately, the losses we are experiencing from this program prevent us from continuing to make it available in its current state, end quote. What the losses were not clarified despite requests for commentary from Wegmans by Grocery Dive. Dave, let's go to you first on this one. What are your thoughts on this move? It's a big shift in where Wegmans was going before, and I know a lot of their clients and customers are have a lot of feedback here. What are your thoughts?
I think this is 100% a mistake from a company that I really respect.
Really? Okay, we're gonna have some debate here. Okay,
so I mean, first off, I think we can all acknowledge that frictionless checkout completely aligns with customer preferences in a world where millennials and Gen Zs are starting to become the primary shopper in grocery. So I mean, I think this goes against customer trends in a pretty significant way. And while I'm sure there is a bump in shrink, a slight bump in shrink, it's also important to note that 30% of the labor in the store tends to be cashier in grocery. So I really wonder if they've done the proper math to say every one of those transactions now has to go through a till, and that's whatever 3 to 5 minutes per transaction. That adds up fast, right? So the economics around shrink get interesting when compared to the economics of labor in a store. And I also think that the shrink issue tends to be organized crime. Like the average person that's using this isn't. I think they're using this as an excuse for their shrink problems. And I'm sure perhaps organized crime is using it, but it's not. It's not peanut butter spread. This is 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 bad apples that are using it over and over again, rather than a failure of the program more broadly.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought the labor into the perspective into this, Dave. One of the many things we appreciate about having you and Mohit on the show, because I hadn't even thought about that, and that's such a great point. Mohit, what would you add here? Is there any thoughts that you have before Chris and I give our?
Do you agree with Dave or disagree?
Generally I try to disagree with Dave, but on this one, unfortunately, it seems like I have to. Um, you know, there, I was having a discussion with a small regional grocer probably 3 or 4 weeks back, which were, and they're evaluating these kind of technologies. And one of their biggest questions as part of the meeting was around shrink, right? But you think in the broad scheme of things around store labor in any kind of retail, especially in grocery, is one of your biggest P&L line items. There are ways to get around it, and I think about the Costco experience where if you're standing in a long line and if there was a shop and go experience, but eventually you have someone checking the receipts. There are ways to get around it. So I'm kind of like little bummed on this one. And the fact that there isn't a lot of commentary around why they are letting it there is not enough detail around it. It makes me a little wonder whether it's really shrink or if it's something else which is kind of driving it. Maybe it's capital deployment, maybe it's around problems they're having in terms of recruiting for their stores, right? I mean, this is becoming increasingly difficult to recruit in retail, especially after the pandemic. And as you kind of start thinking about automation, are they running into issues with their existing staff? That could potentially be another hypothesis, why they pulled the plug on this.
Well, Chris, you and I read this headline. We started going back and forth. Really, what are your thoughts here?
I mean, I think I disagree with Dave, but I'm going to say this with a caveat. I think I disagree with you guys a little bit. I mean, I think, and the other part of this that was in the headline that we didn't mention is they actually said that they're still reformulating how they potentially want to do it. And I think so. In essence, I actually agree with the move. Because like we've talked about on this show a lot, if you're going to do scan and go without a controlled exit point, particularly, it becomes really difficult, right? And it probably does lead to shrink more so even than theft, to Dave's point. And then it also has implications on your inventory accuracy as well in terms of, is everything scanned? Do they do it right? And then with all the buy online, pick up in store capabilities, that becomes problematic too. So it doesn't, and to give you an idea too, I think it's important. Like when I say controlled exit points, that doesn't necessarily mean receipt checks at the door, a la a Costco or a Sam's, which are already set up for that. So that's normal for their customer. It just means that everyone has to still exit through a check lane, scan a barcode with some system of control, like which is being deployed at Walmart. Otherwise, you're letting people walk out the door on their own volition as others are shopping normally. And yes, that's confusing to the customers. It's confusing to your employees to track that. And therefore, you're going to have a lot of theft and shrink. So as an aside from this, I think the right approach is let's regroup, look at our stores architecturally, our design, our user experience of them. And let's also look at other technologies that I think can provide now the same functionality as Scan and Go. Like Scan and Go was like cool like 5 years ago, but there's new technologies that can do the same thing, like computer vision assisted self checkout can be a lot faster, or like what they're doing at HEB, where the computer is looking at the cart, right? And you just roll the cart through, and that basically, approximates the same idea. Or you go the full kit and caboodle, just walk out technology a la Amazon, and that's a better path. So I think given all of those hiccups, that's why I actually kind of like this move, which when I first read it, I was like, wow, I'm surprised they're doing that.
Yeah, I think I agree with all the points that you're bringing up, Chris. I think the key thing is that this tech does not need to be scrapped. It's just it needs to be reevaluated so that they can solve for this shrink problem and all the other things that they've probably learned, because we're talking about Wegmans here. Like, this is one of the most beloved grocers in the country, and the feedback from their customers, like, I mean, if you read, there's like threads and threads on Twitter of like, why are you doing this? This is the reason I come to shop at your store. And I love this. Like, they're so frustrated by losing this component of their shopping experience. And so I think that Wegmans just is going to need to communicate very quickly to those customers, like, we are adapting, we are evolving, we will bring this back.
Isn't gonna
Here's
cut
your
it.
$20 will not cut it, because as we've seen, like, this is causing a shift in where people are deciding to go and do their grocery shopping. And if they want to maintain that brand love and advocacy that they have, they're going to have to figure out, like Dave and Mohit are saying, how they're going to bring this back and how they're going to serve that next generation of customer.
Dave, any final word here?
No, I think we all agree. I think so too. Just simply saying I agree. I believe in the future of that type of technology. I think it's an implementation problem, frankly, or an operational implementation problem, more so than a technology problem. I'd hate to see them pull the plug on a forward-leaning technology because they aren't executing it well.
Yeah, awesome. I always like to give the final word to the person that we disagree with, or find out we agree with ultimately at the end. Funny how that works sometimes, but it's good. That's why we do this show.